Hollywood, 1968. Universal Studios. The film is Villa Rides. A western about Pancho Villa and the Mexican Revolution. Yul Brynner plays Villa. Robert Mitchum plays an American pilot. Charles Bronson plays a revolutionary leader named Fierro. The director is Buzz Kulik. He's worked in television mostly. This is his second feature film. He's eager to prove himself. Wants everything perfect. Wants every performance exactly how he envisions it. Bronson has been in Hollywood for 18 years at this point. He's 47 years old. Still doing supporting roles. Still the tough guy. Still waiting for his breakthrough. But he's survived. Outlasted hundreds of actors who came and went. Built a reputation as reliable. Professional. Someone who shows up and does the work. The first week of filming goes smoothly. Bronson knows his lines. Hits his marks. Does what's required. No complaints from anyone. He's playing Fierro as a hard man. A killer. Someone who's seen too much death to smile about anything. Serious. Dangerous. Authentic. Kulik watches the dailies from that first week. He sees Bronson's performance. Technically perfect. Emotionally contained. Completely authentic to the character. But something bothers him. Something he can't quite articulate at first. He calls a meeting with Bronson. Asks him to come to his office. Bronson arrives on time. Sits down. Waits. Doesn't ask what this is about. Just waits. Kulik starts carefully. Says the work is good. The performance is solid. But he has some notes. Some adjustments he'd like to see. Bronson nods. Says okay. What adjustments? Kulik explains. Says Fierro is too serious. Too dark. The character needs some lightness. Some charm. Some moments where the audience can like him. Connect with him. Root for him. Bronson asks what specifically Kulik wants changed. Kulik says he wants Bronson to smile more. Be more friendly. Show some warmth. Give the audience something to hold on to. Something that makes Fierro more than just a killer. Bronson is quiet for a moment. Then he asks a simple question. Why would this man smile? Kulik is thrown by the question. Says, what do you mean, why would he smile? People smile. It's natural. It makes characters likable. Bronson says, but this character isn't supposed to be likable. He's a revolutionary. A soldier. He's killed dozens of men. Watched friends die. Seen things that destroy whatever part of a person makes them smile. Why would he suddenly smile because the director wants the audience to feel comfortable? Kulik shifts in his chair. Says it's about accessibility. About giving the audience a way into the character. If Fierro is just dark and dangerous the whole time, the audience won't connect. They need moments of humanity. Warmth. Smiling is humanity. Bronson shakes his head slightly. Says no. Humanity isn't smiling. Humanity is truth. This character's truth is that he's been broken by war. By violence. By the revolution that's consumed his life. Smiling would be a lie. Would betray everything the character has experienced. Kulik is getting frustrated now. Says Charlie, I'm the director. I know what the film needs. The film needs you to smile occasionally. To show some warmth. It's not about the character. It's about the audience. Bronson says if it's not about the character, then I can't do it. My job is to be truthful to who this man is. Not to make the audience comfortable. If you want someone who smiles, cast someone else. I'm playing this man the way he would actually be. The conversation is getting tense. Kulik says you're being difficult. Bronson says I'm being honest. There's a difference. Kulik tries another approach. Says look at other actors in the film. Brinner smiles. Mitchum has charm. You're the only one playing it so seriously. It's unbalanced. It makes your character feel one-dimensional. Bronson says maybe the other actors are playing their characters wrong. Or maybe their characters are different from mine. But I'm not going to smile just to match their tone. Each character has their own truth. This is mine. Kulik realizes he's not going to win this argument directly. So he changes tactics. Says okay. Let's try it both ways. Give me one take where you play it your way. Then give me one take where you try what I'm asking. We'll look at both and decide which works better. Bronson agrees to this. Says fine. I'll give you both. But I'm telling you now, the smiling version will look false. You'll see it doesn't work. They go back to set. The scene they're shooting is Fierro talking to Villa about strategy. Planning an attack. Discussing how many men they'll lose. It's a serious scene. Dark subject matter. Kulik calls action. Bronson plays it his way first. Serious. Hard. No warmth. Just two soldiers discussing death like it's a business transaction. Because for them, it is. Kulik calls cut. Says that's good. Now let's try it with a little more warmth. Maybe a smile when you talk about the plan. Show that you have faith in it. Show confidence. Bronson nods. Says okay. You'll get your smile. They reset. Kulik calls action again. Bronson does the scene. Exactly the same as before. Same tone. Same intensity. Same seriousness. But at the moment Kulik asked for a smile, Bronson's mouth moves. Slightly. The corners of his lips go up. Barely. For maybe half a second. Then gone. It's technically a smile. But it's the coldest, most threatening smile anyone has ever seen. It doesn't show warmth. It shows danger. It shows a man who's so far beyond normal human emotion that when he tries to smile, it looks like a predator baring its teeth. Kulik calls cut. The crew is silent. Everyone saw what Bronson just did. The malicious compliance. Giving the director exactly what he asked for in the most inappropriate way possible. Kulik looks at the script supervisor. Asks if she saw that smile. She nods. Says yes. It was terrifying. Kulik looks back at Bronson. Bronson's face is neutral. Waiting. Kulik says okay. Point made. We'll do it your way. Bronson nods. Says thank you. They move on. But that incident becomes a story on set. Crew members talk about it. About how Bronson gave the director exactly what he asked for and in doing so proved why the request was wrong. About how you can't force an actor to do something that betrays the character just to make the audience comfortable. The story spreads beyond Villa rides. Other directors hear about it. Some think Bronson was being difficult. Unprofessional. Refusing direction. Others understand what he was doing. Standing up for the integrity of the character. Refusing to lie for the sake of likability. One of the people who hears the story is Michael Winner. The director who will later cast Bronson in Death Wish. Winner is impressed. Not by Bronson's defiance. By his commitment to truth. By his understanding that characters should be real, not comfortable. Winner seeks out Bronson for a meeting. Wants to understand his philosophy. His approach to acting. They sit down over coffee. Winner asks about the Villa rides incident. Asks why Bronson refused to smile. Bronson explains his thinking. Says real people don't smile just to be likable. They smile when they have a reason. When something genuinely amuses them or pleases them. But Hollywood wants actors to smile all the time. To be charming. To make the audience feel good. And that creates false performances. Winner asks if Bronson ever smiles in real life. Bronson says of course. When something is actually funny. When he's with his family. When there's a genuine reason. But not on command. Not to make someone else comfortable. Not to seem friendly when he doesn't feel friendly. Winner says, but doesn't that limit the roles you can play? If you refuse to smile, you'll only get cast as tough guys and villains. Bronson says good. Those are the roles that feel true to who I am. I'd rather play a limited range authentically than play everything falsely. Winner thinks about this. Then asks, what if a director you respect asks you to smile? Someone whose judgment you trust. Would you do it then? Bronson says if the director can explain why the character would smile in that moment, if they can show me the logic within the character's reality, then yes. I'll do it. But if they just want me to smile to make the audience comfortable, then no. That's not my job. Winner asks what Bronson thinks his job is. Bronson says to tell the truth. To show people who these characters really are. Not who the audience wants them to be. If that makes people uncomfortable, so be it. Discomfort is honest. False charm is manipulation. This conversation plants a seed in Winner's mind. Years later, when he's casting Death Wish, he remembers this. Remembers Bronson's commitment to authenticity over likability. And he realizes that's exactly what Paul Kersey needs. An actor who won't try to make a vigilante likable. Who'll play him as he really would be. Dark. Dangerous. Uncomfortable. Back on Villa Rides, Kulik and Bronson finished the film with a new understanding. Kulik stops asking for warmth. Stops trying to make Fierro accessible. Just lets Bronson play the character as he sees him. And the performance works. Critics note it. Say Bronson brings a frightening authenticity to the role. That he doesn't try to soften the character or make him sympathetic. But there's a cost to this approach. Some directors avoid casting Bronson. They hear he's difficult. Refuses direction. Won't do what you ask. They want actors who are malleable. Who'll adjust their performance to whatever the director wants. Bronson isn't that actor. Never will be. This limits his opportunities for years. Keeps him in supporting roles. Keeps him from the kind of breakthrough that more accommodating actors achieve. But Bronson doesn't compromise. Doesn't change his approach. Doesn't start smiling to get more work. His wife, Jill Ireland, asks him about this once. Asks why he won't just do what directors want. Make things easier. Smile when they ask him to smile. It's just acting. It doesn't mean anything. Bronson says it means everything. Says if I start lying in small ways, I'll end up lying in big ways. If I smile when the character wouldn't smile, what else will I do that isn't true? Where does it stop? Better to be difficult and honest than easy and false. She asks if he ever regrets it. If he wishes he'd been more flexible. More willing to compromise. Bronson thinks about it. Says sometimes. When money is tight. When he sees other actors getting roles he wanted. But then he watches those performances. Sees the false smiles. The manufactured charm. The actors trying so hard to be likable. And he's glad he stayed true. The industry eventually comes around to Bronson's way of thinking. Not all of it. Not quickly. But gradually. As audiences grow tired of false charm. As they start craving authenticity. As anti-heroes become popular. As darker characters gain acceptance. By the early 1970s, Hollywood is ready for actors who don't smile. Who don't try to be likable. Who play dangerous men as genuinely dangerous. And Bronson is perfectly positioned. Because he's been doing that all along. Not because it was trendy. Because it was true. When Death Wish releases in 1974, critics who review it note that Bronson never tries to make Paul Kersey sympathetic. Never smiles inappropriately. Never softens the character's transformation into a killer. One reviewer writes that Bronson's refusal to seek the audience's approval makes Kersey terrifyingly real. That's what Kulik never understood back in 1968. That refusing to smile wasn't Bronson being difficult. It was Bronson being true. And that truth, that commitment to authenticity over likability, is what eventually made him a star. The smile controversy becomes part of Bronson's legend. Younger actors hear about it. Learn from it. Understand that you don't have to make every character likable. That audiences can handle uncomfortable truth. That sometimes the most powerful performances come from actors who refuse to soften their characters or seek approval. Clint Eastwood built his career on this principle. The man with no name doesn't smile. Doesn't try to be charming. Just exists. Dangerous and authentic. Eastwood learned that partly from watching Bronson. From seeing how refusing to compromise pays off eventually. Liam Neeson applies the same approach in Taken. Brian Mills doesn't smile. Doesn't crack jokes. Doesn't try to make the audience like him. Just pursues his objective with grim determination. The performance works because it's true to who the character would be. These actors owe a debt to Bronson. To his willingness to be difficult. To his refusal to smile on command. To his understanding that truth matters more than likability. That audiences ultimately respect honesty over charm. In 1985, a film student interviews Bronson for a class project. Asks about the Villa Rides incident. Asks if Bronson would handle it differently now. Knowing what he knows. Having achieved the success he's achieved. Bronson says no. He'd do exactly the same thing. Says the moment you start compromising your truth for approval is the moment you stop being an artist and become a product. And he never wanted to be a product. The student asks if Bronson thinks all actors should refuse to smile. Bronson says no. Some characters should smile. Some actors have personalities that work with charm. But you have to know who you are. What you bring. What's authentic to you. And then you have to commit to that, even when it's difficult. He says his face was never going to be charming. His presence was never going to be warm. The coal mines and the war and 20 years of rejection made him into something else. Something harder. Something more dangerous. And trying to pretend otherwise would have been dishonest. So when directors asked him to smile, to be friendly, to soften his performances, they were really asking him to lie about who he was. And he couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. Not for a job. Not for approval. Not even for success. The student asks what advice Bronson would give to young actors. Bronson thinks for a moment. Then says know your truth. Know what you authentically are and what you authentically aren't. Then commit to that completely. Don't try to be what you think people want. Be what you actually are. Do that well enough, and eventually the world catches up. He says Hollywood will always want you to compromise. To smile when you don't feel like smiling. To be charming when you feel dangerous. To soften yourself to make audiences comfortable. And if you do that, you might get work. Might even get successful. But you'll lose something essential. You'll lose yourself. Better to be difficult and honest than easy and false. Better to be limited and authentic than versatile and fake. Better to play a small range truthfully than play everything dishonestly. Because audiences can feel the difference. They might not know what they're feeling. But they know when something is real and when it's manufactured. That smile Kulik wanted in 1968 would have made Fierro more likable. More accessible. Easier for audiences to root for. But it would have made him less real. Less true. Less powerful. And Bronson understood that the power of performance comes from truth, not from making people comfortable. So he refused to smile. Not to be difficult. Not to challenge the director. But because smiling would have been a lie. And Bronson had learned over 20 years in Hollywood that the one thing you can't fake is authenticity. Either you have it or you don't. Either you commit to truth or you compromise for approval. He chose truth. Every time. Even when it cost him work. Even when it kept him in supporting roles. Even when other actors got opportunities he deserved. Because he knew that eventually, if he stayed true long enough, the world would come around. Would recognize that what they actually wanted wasn't charm. Was authenticity. And when that moment came, when Death Wish and the 1970s made dangerous antiheroes acceptable, Bronson was ready. Not because he'd changed. Because he'd stayed the same. Had refused to smile when it wasn't true. Had committed to authenticity even when it was difficult. That's the real story of why Bronson wouldn't smile. Not stubbornness. Not ego. Truth. The understanding that you can't build a lasting career on false charm. That eventually, the lie shows through. That the only foundation worth building on is complete authenticity, even when that authenticity makes you difficult. Directors learned this lesson eventually. Learned that asking Bronson to smile was like asking water to be less wet. It went against his fundamental nature. Better to cast him as he was and use that truth. Better to let him be dangerous and real than force him to be charming and false. And audiences learned it too. Learned that they didn't actually want every character to be likable. Sometimes they wanted uncomfortable truth. Wanted to see men who'd been broken by life and didn't pretend otherwise. Wanted authenticity even when it was dark and dangerous and hard to watch. Charles Bronson gave them that. Not by smiling when directors asked. By refusing to smile when it wasn't true. By understanding that cinema philosophy isn't about making audiences comfortable. It's about showing them truth. And truth doesn't always smile. Sometimes it just stares. Hard. Dangerous. Real. That stare, that refusal to soften or charm or seek approval, became his signature. Became what made him iconic. Became proof that you don't have to smile to connect with audiences. You just have to be undeniably real. And Bronson was that. Always. In every role. In every moment. In every refusal to compromise. So when a director told Bronson to smile more and be friendly, and Bronson refused, it wasn't rebellion. It was philosophy. The understanding that authenticity matters more than likability. That truth is more powerful than charm. That you can't fake your way to genuine success. You either are or you aren't. And if you are, you stay true. No matter what anyone asks. No matter what it costs. That philosophy became cinema history. Became the foundation for a generation of actors who understood they didn't have to be likable to be powerful. Who learned from Bronson that refusing to compromise might limit you in the short term but defines you in the long term. That the actors who last aren't the ones who give directors what they want. They're the ones who give audiences what they need. Truth. Even when it doesn't smile.